Okay, so today I will be discussing the Marvel timeline, just in general, and also the very peculiar circumstances of several things. Now, this will have spoilers for Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness. It'll also have spoilers for Loki Season 1 and Season 2, and WandaVision. So if you haven't watched those, you don't be spoiled, please go watch those. In general, they're all, well, Multiverse of Madness, a little mid, honestly, but WandaVision, amazing, and Loki, oh my gosh, just best stuff on the planet. Okay, so, to start things off, we gotta talk about the state of the multiverse, and how hecking weird it is. So, effectively, what we see is, so in Loki Season 1, which, make a quick timeline, we have Phase 1 to Phase 3, okay? Can you see that? Not really. Okay, but just know that that's there. So that's Phase 1 through Phase 3. Now, going from there, we have Endgame right here. So we have Endgame. So Endgame is really important because that's when they go time traveling, and they also cause Loki to go into a different timeline. So right after that is Loki, technically right after. But here's where the confusion happens. So at the end of oh wait, yeah, did I say there'd be spoilers for Endgame? If not, my bad. There's spoilers for Endgame, which if you haven't watched the most watched movie debatably of all time in the past 5 years, I don't know why you're watching this movie yet, video actually. Like, that's really peculiar. But hey, I'm glad for the viewers. So, Endgame, we have at the very end of all the time travel shenanigans, we have what's it called? We have Captain America. There we go. That's his name. So Captain America go back in time, and when he goes back in time, he ends up staying with Peggy Carter and growing old with her. Now, the TVA did say some weird stuff, which TVA, if you didn't watch Loki and you just don't care, the TVA is basically the Time Ordinance Society. Anyway, most important thing is that they make sure that the quote-unquote sacred timeline is kept intact, which is just the base Marvel timeline. Now, this is really important because if we have the people keeping the timeline safe, and there's some really stupid stuff that happens. So Loki, so in Endgame, they go back in time and they try to get all the stones, all the Infinity Stones, so they can stop, well, they can bring back everyone who Thanos killed. Now, well, that's a really cool idea. They don't want to cause a paradox like we talked about in my last video, where you go back in time, you get all the stones, you go forward in time, and you kill Thanos before he can snap his fingers, which would then cause you to not do any of that. So they realized this and decided that instead of going back in time and causing, a paradox, they would just go back in time, gather the stones they need, then come back into the future, well, into the present, and just fix everything that he did, rather than just go back in time and stop him, So, effectively, with that all in mind, they go back in time, and they end up scuffing the retrieval of the Space Stone, and Loki ends up taking it and disappearing. Now, when he gets taken away to the TVA because they're like, hey, you're not supposed to escape, but it causes everyone who was there, well, not everyone, but it causes at least one person, if not two people, to go back in time, well, my bad, back in time to go get the time stone at a different location that they knew about, and also where they had more pin particles. Now, doing that caused what's his name, Tony Stark to encounter his father, Howard Stark. Now, while they were there talking, I believe he semi-caused his own name, but I could be wrong. But the main point is they caused a decent amount of impact on this world and took an Infinity Stone from it, at least for a few minutes. Now, might not cause a huge amount of problems, but it caused them to time travel to a different place and do some stuff, which, with the amount of stuff they did, isn't too great, but I would assume it was caused some sort of problem to happen. So Loki escaping should have been within this understanding, but the TVA says no, you weren't supposed to escape, so you were violating and you were causing a split timeline, whereas everything that they're doing is okay because it's part of the sacred timeline. Well, that's really weird, but we'll let it fly. Now, TVA basically just prunes any timelines that are branching off, which is just the most ridiculous technology ever, as you're literally wiping away an existence, and they're just using these little cubey things to do it, which is just the most ridiculously overpowered technology I've ever seen in my entire life. But you know, whatever. That's an entirely different story. I remember I was talking to someone about how ridiculous the technology was and how it didn't necessarily make sense. But I think at the end they kind of make it make sense, but not really. But that's a totally different story. Main point is, so then Loki is doing time travel shenanigans and stopping alternate timelines. And at the end, he meets up with Kang. So Kang is at the end of time, and he's like, look, I'm the person here protecting the timeline and not having much of multiple alternate universes where I exist. He's like, because I'm a big problem. So if more of me exist, it's going to be a massive war happening. We're all going to die. And so one of the girls is like, yeah, but you shouldn't be wiping out entire universes because that's kind of messed up. And he's like, yeah, but then the Kangs will do it either way. So either I do it in a quick, simple, easy way, or we can do it just an all-out war and cause everyone to suffer. Like, you know, a kind of understandable take, you know? And so they kill him. Well, she kills him. And she makes, you know, Loki gets sent away. So, big rip. So season 1 ends like that. And then it ends with tons of different timelines sprouting up all over the place. So now there's tons of different timelines because he died. Now, here comes my little tidbit. So these timelines are sprouting from everywhere, past, present, future. So if there was a timeline starting from the past, then it would have been there already when it was the present. So basically, if you're, let's say you're Joe Schmo, and you're right here in the middle of the timeline, right around when Loki gets disappeared, and 1 minute there's no alternate timelines, the next minute there is, but those alternate timelines started in the past, so technically those timelines would have always been there. But since Kang was there for so long, they weren't there for so long. But he was at the end of time. So that means he was at the end of all of time. So time had already almost come to an end. The universe and the entire multiverse, basically, I guess you could say, had almost just stopped existing because it had just been around for so long. It was the end of time. Time stopped moving there, and time no longer progressed. So, if time no longer progresses past here, time has already effectively run its course. So, now that all of time has run, and there's no multiverse, suddenly, time has always had multiverse. You see how weird this is? It's very, very trippy, because, you know, it's almost like if there was never any sickness in the world, and then someone goes back in time to the beginning of the world and starts disease, has there always been disease, or has there only been disease for like half of the world's time? That's a real good question. Is, you know, Has there always been timelines, or have there just never been timelines until now? I mean, it really works either way, because they killed him. And then it becomes super trippy, because they kill him, and this happens. So now there's tons of Kangs who've just been existing for a while, because they started in the past, but technically they're from the future, because technically the future has already happened in the Marvel Universe. We're just not there yet. So if the future has already happened and we're just not there yet, then that also means that they're coming from the future to the past to do things, which are just entirely trippy and really cool. Now, to go even further, so this is a cool timeline, but we're not going to need it for a bit. So, well, technically not so much. So we're going to do kind of a dual timeline, and I kind of talked about this in my other video, but I don't want to get into too much spoilers, just talking about normal multiverse. So we have the timeline of the universe, right? This is the sacred timeline, really simple, really easy. Then we have one little problem. So we have the TVA. The TVA and its technical timeline. Now, this is a place out of time and out of space, so you can't really find it, and it doesn't technically have a past, present, or future. However, we saw Loki in season 2 time slipping in the TVA, which is effectively he was going back and forth in time in the TVA, going to the future and the past, which means, besides the obvious, us seeing that time does pass in the TVA, because if you were moving, objects in motion are effectively time. Something like that. There's some kind of mathematical situation for that basically explains that if an object is moving, time is technically passing. Now, well, real time may not be passing in the TVA. Time is technically passing in the TVA because there is a past of the TVA and the future of the TVA, and someone time traveled in it. Now, technically you shouldn't be able to do that because of the way that it's built, but it means that TVA has been running. Now, here's the thing. The TVA has the ability to time travel anywhere on the timeline, but it has its own timeline separate from the main sacred timeline. So, technically, that means that whenever it starts sprouting a bunch of incursion points, they call them, not incursion points, so it starts sprouting different places on the multiverse and making different timelines. Now here's something funny. The TVA only has a few minutes to respond to any given what's it called? Timeline before it becomes stabilized, because it's when it's still early, it's not stable, and they can still shut it down pretty easily. Now, here's a really weird thing, is that the TVA, a place outside of time, outside of space, has a time limit on when they can react to something. Because if you are outside of time, you should be able to wait 50 years and it should still be at the same point and you can hit it. Now, of course, there's a thing called tension that you need to build in shows to make, you have to react. Oh my gosh, it's gonna go crazy, whatever. Because you need them to be rushing to do something. Because if it's not, you don't have them a lot of tension in the story. So, understandable. But I do think it's really weird that they're like, oh no, an alternate timeline is starting. You have a time machine. You could just travel to that moment, theoretically, at any given time. You don't need specifically, anything else. It's just, you're like, oh, at this exact moment, starting an alternate timeline. Just put that on the record and we'll get to it later. We're having an office party, So, I think that's kind of weird. But, maybe they have their own universal logic they just haven't shared with us yet. Now, here's the kind of really weird thing, is that in the third season, as he's time slipping, he eventually goes back in time to visit Kang. So Kang is technically still alive in the past, because in the past he wasn't killed yet. It's only now that he's been killed. but there are still multiple timelines going on. So technically, he was killed in the future, but he was living in the past. So, if he dies here, and then you can still find him here. Whoops. So you can still find him here. He dies here, and when he dies, it creates multiple timelines, and he still exists. That means that technically he could have come into contact with a Kang, because since he dies in the future, that is going to happen unless he actively goes into the future to prevent it, which he actively says that he doesn't want to do. So him dying is retroactively, well, it triggers the multiverse to happen. But the multiverse was technically already happening, because he already died in the past, in the future, that would have triggered the event of the multiverse happening, which you can go back in time and find him while there is currently a multiverse going on. So he would have been able to see that there is a multiverse. So theoretically the multiverse was always happening, but at the same time it wasn't, because they were protecting it. But he's still there, alive, as there is a multiverse. So that means that either there is two technical forms of reality going on, and one form of reality is where there is a single sacred timeline, the other one is where there's a multiverse going on, and they're just a mirror universe of each other, which is just insane. Or this makes no sense, but in a good way. Like, I don't know how you would make this actually make sense, that there's a multiverse, but at the same time there's not a multiverse. Because like, you could argue that technically in the scene where he goes back in time to go talk to him, it is when the universe is blowing up and destroying all the other timelines except for the sacred timeline. However, there's one little problem with that, is that whenever it's blowing up all the timelines, he goes back in time to before all the timelines blow up, and then he goes and talks to him. So, technically the timelines were still there as the multiverse when he was talking to him in the office, and he was realizing, oh, so you did it, now there's a multiverse. Now he is just locked in his little room, so he wouldn't actually know much, but hasn't it technically always existed? But then again, this place is out of time and space, so although it can interact with the real-time events of the universe, it is not connected to it, so it won't be impacted by any changes in the timeline. So they can view the difference in between the multiverse before and after, but our universe and saying the multiverse can't actually tell, because they were always there in the beginning. Like, they have always been out of time, so they can view the timeline from a different point of view, whereas those in the timeline will always view the timeline as just being there always and forever, because it happened before they existed. For example, like last video where I talked about, if you have an omniscient, omnipresent being viewing something, they would be able to view the entire timeline from the beginning to the end at any given moment. And if there was any changes made into that time, they would understand it and they would respond to those, because they'd be able to see the changes happening in real time to any point of the timeline and see those actions causing repercussions along the timeline. So basically, this is a jumble of gobbledygook, but it's amazing. Now, here's something interesting. So, this is sort of a side tangent, but it's still a really fun tangent. So, a lot of people complained about Multiverse of Madness, and me and my friend went to go watch it whenever it was first in theaters, Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, and there was a few things we picked up on really quickly that just felt out of place. And one of those was Doctor Strange felt different. We couldn't really put our finger on it. It maybe, at the end of the day, maybe it was just a different director doing a different thing, and it made the character feel weird. Because the biggest problem with Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness is that it wasn't character driven. It was more story driven, and they were like, but we need the character to have like emotions and stuff, so he didn't get with the girl. Rough. Which I understand, you got your love of your life, you don't end up with her. It's really depressing. And then everyone in the multiverse is like, fumbling her. Like, dude, you got no riz, Well, maybe they got riz, but they just got no stability mentally or physically, which is fair, Trembling hands. Muscular degeneracy. Not muscular degeneracy. That's neurological problems. Anyway, main point is so at the beginning of the movie, we see him start using monsters. Now, he's never used monsters before to attack someone. We saw him use the red threads of whatever it's called. We saw him use shackles. We saw him use a bunch of different artifacts and weapons and stuff, but we'd never seen him use any monsters before. Now, you could just say, well, maybe he learned it, and that's fair. That's entirely fair. But it's one of the weird things that's just maybe a nitpick, but it feels weird. Okay, then here comes the biggest thing. One of the two biggest things that I noticed whenever I was watching it was that he has a conversation whenever they first run into America Chavez in a diner. Now they're talking in the diner. Let's see. So Wong says, the Book of Ashanti. Yeah, you read about it in the book that you get when you're a Sorcerer Supreme. And then Chavez is like, wait, you're not the Sorcerer Supreme? And then Dr. Strange responds, no, I'm not. And then Chavez says, oh, you were in my universe. So, knowing Doctor Strange like we do, he probably would have responded with, I was. Like he did in Spider-Man, where he's like, I was, but this guy, took it by technicality. But, maybe he moved past that. But the main thing is, so we saw in the first one that there was an entire library full of books. And he started reading all of them. And then he started reading the specific books that were only supposed to be read by the Sorcerer Supreme, a private library. And he started reading those too. Now, he has a photographic memory. Now, you could say, well, maybe he didn't have a whole lot of time to read them. Well, he was Sorcerer Supreme. He had 6 to 8 months between the end of, Doctor Strange, and when he becomes Sorcerer Supreme, and the beginning of, I believe it's Infinity War. So he had 6 to 8 months of him just reading books, which I believe he read through the entire library in about a year, if that. So if you read through an entire library in about a year, I think he could make it through the 20, 40 books in her private collection in a couple months. So there's no reason why he shouldn't have read that book and know about it. I understand giving dialogue to the watchers so that they can know what's going on, but I do feel it really weird that it seems like everyone forgot that he was Sorcerer Supreme. It's a little weird. Everyone just like, oh, you're Sorcerer Supreme? I didn't know, It's kind of strange. And yeah, I don't know, just like the entire movie, this felt like no one knew that he was Sorcerer Supreme. And then, let's see, what was the other reason? Yeah, then the rest of the stuff is mostly just with Wanda. So there's obviously everyone's main complaint of why doesn't she want to be with Vision? She's only talking about her kids. What about Vision? Did she just forget about him? Who's Vision? But she literally talks about having to blow his brains out. Well, technically his brains out. Whenever she killed him. But she never ever expresses the desire to be with him, only with her kids. Which some people might be like, well, women have just a stronger maternal desire towards their kids than for their husbands or whatever, and they just want to be with their kids, and their husbands are like, oh, I guess so, Which I'm like, she took over an entire town subconsciously just to be with her husband. Now, it is true, she finally let go, and she was supposedly okay, but come on, she was clearly not. So I'm like, I don't really buy that. I think that she would still want to be with her husband. Well, I guess husband, significant other at the very least. I'm not really sure what the heck they are. It's just a robot, you know. But I would think she'd want to be with him. Also, there's just no appearance of Vision. Maybe they just didn't want to put Vision in the movie because he's in a weird place right now. But I don't know. It just felt really weird. But that's again just a weird quirk. Whoopsie, weird quirk. But here's the really weird thing. So we see in Doctor Strange and in WandaVision these weird red orbs that they can produce, and they can look at the multiverse in real time. At least it appears to be in real time. And so as he's looking at the multiverse, he finds them where they're at specifically, and then he closes it. Now, as I just talked about the multiverse being really weird and time being really weird, there is no denouncing that possibility, because we don't know the full extent of the ability, to maybe look into the future. But it appears from everything we see that it's only in real time that you're able to see things happening. From the few instances we do see of it, it appears to just be in real time what is happening in other universes. Now, with that stated, we see at the very end of WandaVision, she's in a little cabin. She's doing the orb thing, looking at other universes, which is really interesting because WandaVision happens before Loki. Wait, no. Does it happen before? I think it does happen before Loki. I think it was just before Loki. I could be wrong though. But I'm pretty sure it happens just before Loki. So she was looking at multiverses, technically before multiverses existed. Once again, interesting quirk. But that's besides the point. The main point is that as she's looking at the multiverse, she hears, "Mom, help, Mom," in just about that exact tone, that exact voice. I'm not very good at imitating a child's voice because, I have a cold right now. Well, this is a cough. And also, I'm a fully grown adult. Pretty much. I would hope so. Maybe I'll grow a little taller. Gotta get that half inch so I can be 6 foot. Anyway, so those are the exact lines that her kid in a different universe says whenever the Wanda from our universe is attacking them. Now, whenever I was first watching it, I was expecting Wanda to be like, "I need to go find my kids because they're in danger. They're in danger." And that would be like, okay, that's understandable. Your kids are in danger. They're saying, "Mom, help, Mom. You need to go save them," But we don't see that. We see her, "I want to be with my kids. Yeah, I want to be with my kids because I won't find a universe where I died and just replace their mom like, what's his name did in Spider-Man. I'm just gonna, kill somebody, kill 2 people, oh well, like full psychopath." And so, well, that's all understandable. The main problem is simply the fact that she doesn't want to go save her kids, which is the most primal instinct for a mother is, "I'm going to protect my kids," classic mother bear. But she doesn't do that. So, which makes it even stronger for me to believe that this is not our Wanda, but the Wanda at the end of WandaVision was, and she was viewing an alternate universe where Wanda was attacking another alternate universe Wanda and trying to steal her kids, while a Doctor Strange from a different universe was trying to stop them. Now, is almost all of this just very circumstantial? Debatably. But I still think it holds really strong. Now, my current theory is that the Doctor Strange we see at the end of Multiverse of Madness with his eye opening is not our Doctor Strange, but is a different universe of Doctor Strange. That they're going to have the incursion event that they discussed at the end of the movie be happening with the mainline Marvel Universe. So the mainline Marvel Universe is having an incursion with this alternate universe Doctor Strange's universe. And that's going to be the main premise of, what's it called? I forget the name of the new Avengers movie, but Secret Wars, something like that. Yeah, pretty Secret Wars. That's what the comic's called. So, basically, that's what my theory is. because a lot of things were weird, and then two things were extremely weird. Now, it could just be a classic case of the director just forgetting or just not caring about the previous material, but like, I want to write this movie that's a little scary, and we're going to do this. And also, they entirely scrapped the original, content, which was going to be really cool, but they decided not to do, which is like lame. And also, they switched the order of the movies, which then messed up more stuff. So there's just like a lot of really messed up stuff that happened in the organization of the movies and the creation of movies. But, yeah, it'd be like that sometimes. But, yeah, so basically, that's kind of the current state of the multiverse and time travel in the MCU. Is we know there's a multiverse. We technically know when the multiverse started, but technically the multiverse has always been there. The TVA is now just looking for Kang, and all in all, it technically makes sense. It barely makes sense, but it does make sense. And that's the most important part. Is time travel never makes 100% sense because it's basically traveling in the fourth dimension, which once again doesn't make sense. And I keep forgetting the name of the YouTuber, but she does the best explanation of dimensions, and it's honestly really cool. So basically, time travel's weird once again, but it kind of makes sense. And Marvel didn't do a too bad job of it. Honestly, I'm kind of impressed, and I kind of like it. There are still some like weird things that happen in the timeline, and really weird conversations, and really weird time travel. But not too bad. Not too bad. I gotta say, pretty good. Anyway, hope you guys have a good day. Have a good night. Hopefully, you actually understood what I was talking about. If not, hopefully at least sounded interesting when talking about it. Have a great day, y'all. Bye.